What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 best Warhammer builds in New World Aeternum that are optimized for both PvE and PvP. As I will cover a lot of builds, so not to spend too much time, for each setup I will give you a quick overview of its playstyle. Then as well I will explain the best skill tree setup, then what gear should you wear, then even how many attributes should you allocate for each stat, and much more. So then moving over to the first build, which is the sword and the warhammer. This setup focuses on crowd control and using your tankiness to do massive amounts of AoE damage while surviving huge amount of enemy hits. If you use the best skill tree build, then both of these weapons will synergize perfectly to allow for a flurry of abilities that will leave the enemy target staggered, stunned and knocked down over and over again. So as our job will be to prevent the enemy from moving, so then us or our team will be able to finish them off. Of course, we won't be dealing the craziest amount of DPS, but the staggers and massive amount of survivability will be definitely worth the trade-off. So let's take a look at the build. For our gear choice, we will go with the heavy armor, as this will give us the maximum amount of defense and will enable us to use the best shield in the game. Also, since our build's primary objective is to stun and tank, so going full heavy is a no-brainer. Next we have the attributes, and we want to get from 300 to 350 strength, then 25 focus and 300 constitution. No matter at which level or gear score you currently are, pretty much just split your attributes to half, so put 50 points into strength and 50 in constitution. Next up we have our setup for the sword and shield. This skill tree is more focused on holding the enemy's aggro, increasing our defense and speed, and of course most importantly giving us some of the best defensive tools as well. And then again, this is how it should look like for the warhammer. So then on the other hand, this setup focuses on increasing our AoE damage and locking down your targets. The warhammer has the best AoE potential in the game, and as a tank this is very useful for both PvE and PvP. So if you are interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. Overall, if you are looking for one of the best and most fun tank builds, then here it is. Next we have Great Axe with the Warhammer. This is a very old school build, but with just few new changes, it still can be very strong and powerful. The Great Axe with the Warhammer weapon combination is an extremely strong and well balanced setup, which offers really good burst, chasing potential and damage reduction. This build is similar to the Great Axe and the hatchet in a lot of ways, but in my opinion the peak damage and healing is a bit lower, although it will bring more CC and damage reduction to the table. So moving over to the build, and for our gear we will go either way with the medium or full heavy armor. The choice will depend on your playstyle. So if you want to go full tank, then go with the heavy, or perhaps if you want to mix and match damage with survivability, then go with medium. I personally will choose to go with medium. Next we have the skill tree setup for the Great Axe. So this time I've made it around the best AoE skills that this weapon can offer. This whole setup is one huge AoE damage machine, and these skills for sure are the best in that regard. And then again, this is how it should look like for the warhammer. So again, we go with strong AoE skills and armor penetration as well. If you are interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. And overall, if you're looking for a very OG but great tank build that can be used both for PvE and PvP, then here it is. So moving over to the next build, which is the Lifestaff and the Warhammer. This setup's main focus is on being a frontline healer that can get down and dirty, but also support his team. By using the Warhammer, we will be able to do big crowd control and AoE damage, while by using the Lifestaff, we will have the ability to keep up and heal our main frontline tanks and other players that other ranged healers would not be able to reach. The Warhammer and Lifestaff combination is very popular in wars and expeditions. However, it's been proven to be very strong in almost every single activity, as long as the player knows when to get in close and do damage and when to keep his distance. So let's take a look at our setup. For our gear choice we will go with the medium category, as this will give us the perfect balance between defense and high healing output. I've also seen few players going full heavy, but that is more of a paladin build, where at that point you might as well go full sword and shield with the Lifestaff and become a completely self-sustaining tank. Then next we have attributes, and we should get 50 strength, then 400 focus, and then also 200 constitution. I had a similar thought process for our stats as well, so we want to do damage, heal, and survive at the same time, so these stats are in the perfect ratio against one another. Technically, you could move 25 points back and forth between the strength, but besides that, you definitely want to have this 2:1 ratio for focus versus constitution. And then on top of that, don't forget to equip the Ember Gem on your warhammer, as we want it to scale now from focus rather than solely using our low strength. Then next we have the skill tree, and this is how it should look like for the warhammer. So this specific layout was structured around using the best AoE skills in the game, so we can easily stun our enemies, then use our Path of Destiny and completely destroy them. And as our AoE range is quite big, so we want to use the skills for every single activity. And then again, this is how it should look like for the life staff. So this setup was purely made around keeping up our heals with the lowest cooldown spells, so we can spam them 24/7, while also having some AoV for our group or just ourselves. This setup has amazingly high heals and relatively high defense, so no matter if you're new or veteran player, this is one of the best builds which you can just pick up and play from the start. If you're interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. And overall, if you're looking for super fun and high damage and high defense build, then here it is. Then for the next build we have the hatchet with the warhammer. This setup focuses on high survivability and high AoV damage as well, as we're using the hatchet with the berserker skill, so we can damage the enemies from a range while also surviving even the toughest bosses, if we ever drop below 0 HP. If perhaps you want to be a half tank and half DPS, then this is the perfect setup for you. So for our weight, we can again decide to go with the heavy or medium armor. For this setup, I personally prefer to go with the full heavy, but as I've said, it is up to you. Next we have the attributes, and as we're going full tank, so we want to get about 300 strength, then 25 in dexterity, intelligence and focus, and then lastly the last 300 in constitution. And again, if you're not at the max level yet, then just simplify this by putting half points into strength and then the other half in constitution. Next, let's take a look at the skill tree, and this is how it should look like for the warhammer. So pretty similar like the previous bruiser build, as we're focusing on AoV DPS over armor penetration. And then again, this is how it should look like for the hatchet. So we mainly get the berserk skill and upgrade it, while also not forgetting about getting these 2 debuffs. If you are interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. And overall, if you want to use a very powerful tank build that pretty much never dies, then this is it. Then for the next one, we have the warhammer with the greatsword. This setup's main focus is on utilizing its high crowd control and AoV damage, while at the same time having incredible amount of survivability. This build can initiate a surprise engagement, and then the target that gets caught in a crowd control loop will most likely result in their death. If you're looking for a very strong PvE and PvP build, then here it is. So let's take a look at the setup. For our gear choice, we will go with the light category, as this will give us incredible amount of damage, and you can of course go with the medium armor as well. But you will need to sacrifice 100 dexterity for 100 constitution. This build is very high AoV damage, and that's why we want to use 2 dodge rolls and get in and out of fights. Next we have attributes, and we should get 300 strength, then from 250 to 300 dexterity, and finally 100 constitution. But like I said, you can go for more safety and trade 100 dexterity for more constitution and the medium armor. Then next we have the skill tree, and this is how it should look like for the greatsword. So this specific layout was structured around using your high AoV skills that will destroy a bunch of enemies in few seconds. This build has very high mobility but almost no defensive skills, so you will need to be careful as we are prioritizing damage over survivability. And then again, this is how it should look like for the warhammer. So again, very similar principle. We focus on massive AoV damage and super high crowd control, so then we can use hammer to stun an AoV and then switch to the greatsword and do even more DPS. If you are interested in the best gear, perks, consumables and everything else, then keep watching until the end of the video. And overall, if you're looking for super fun and high damage and high CC build, then here you go. And then for the last and final part, let's take a look at the best gear, buff and consumables that pretty much all builds could use. And remember that this is just an example. So as far as armor goes, Of course, slowly but surely, you want to get to 725 gear score. And no matter what you choose, light or medium armor, always use the opal gem on your gear. And if you can, then try to get these perks like health, refreshing and freedom. Then as far as your weapons go, use also the opal gem on all of your weapons besides on the lifestaff, where you need to use the amber gem on rapier to convert its damage to focus. And also for weapon perks, try to get keen, vicious and refreshing move. However, as we have a lot of high bleed skills, so you can also go with perks that increase more of our rapier damage. And last but not least, for our choice of hearts, we should go with the stalwart heart rune of the stone form. And for your consumables, you should already know what to do. So use honing stones for damage increase, then use attribute food for plus 40 attribute stats, and don't forget about healing and regen potions as well, just in case if you get in trouble. And that's about it. So if you enjoyed this video, click like, subscribe and comment. If you are interested in more content, then check out my channel, and I will see you in the next one. So take it easy, peace.